So often the complexity of the formulas that you need to use, it depends on how you design your models. If you design them in a very awkward way, then you have to sort of use very complicated formulas to sort of make up for that. But if you design them well, you can often use very easy formulas. So I'll show you that in a minute, but first of all, let's look at the requirements, what we have here. So here we're supposed to type in a name, and the names could be any of the names in these columns, and then we want to get certain information to come back. So I'll show you. We're going to type in the word Derek, or the name Derek, and here we have the name over here. What we want to pull back is the group number, which comes from here. So it would be the same for these three names. The date, which would be just above it, and then the code, which would be over here. And imagine you have many of these little mini tables all the way across. Maybe you have 100 of them. So proper design would be something like this, where you'd have everything in one table like this for the name, the group, and the code, and then a second table where you have the group number and the date, almost like a database. Then you could simply do a couple of VLOOKUPs, 3 VLOOKUPs, to get the answers. So in this case, let's say there's no time to redesign the whole thing. We're going to look for the pattern, and then we're going to build the formula. So what I've got here is an array formula. Now, I'll walk through the whole thing. Maybe I'll just redo it, and I'll say this. The first thing we want to do, and I'm sure there's many ways to do this, but let's just do it this way for now. If this value, and we'll just lock it like this, just as best habit, equals, and I'm just going to highlight this whole little grid here. The names are somewhere in there. So if that name equals any of those, and the names don't repeat, that's also a key thing. So when it's true, so this is our logical test. When it's true, we want to say, give me the column number. That will locate the name sort of horizontally. So we're going to say the column number, and let's just pick across the top here. We just want to make it so it's the same width as the box that we have highlighted down here. So column G to column M. I'll press the F4 key, put on the bracket, and then if it's false, we don't really care, so we put double quote for blank. I press Control Shift Enter, and this is sort of like the bare array before we are finalized. But let's now highlight this. I will press the F9 key on the keyboard, and now we see there's only one time it's true, because Derek's over here in column M, and that's the column number. That's a 13. So now I'll press Escape, and we are now just need to add some kind of function at the beginning to extract the 13. So let's just use the min function. We could also use max or sum. Control Shift Enter, and now we get the 13. So if I type in another name here, let's say I type in Simon, and I drag this down, oh, there it is. It's a 10. Now, if there's a blank here, we need to do one little thing. We'll do something like this. If this cell equals nothing, then we want to do nothing. Else we will do the array. So I put my final bracket on, I do Control Shift Enter, and let's now just drag this all the way down. So our next step is to use it. Let's use an offset to get the group number. So for Derek, we should be getting group 3, and for Simon, group 2. So we'll simply do a quick offset, and our starting point is going to be right about, what is this, the group. We want to start right there, A12. We'll lock that, we'll do a comma, and now it's asking us how many rows down. Well, we don't want to move any rows down, so we'll say 0. Columns to the right. So we want to use the 13, but we also want to say -1 because we're already in the first column, which is A12. So I put the final bracket around that, and I press Enter, and sure enough, we get group 3. Now, for the date, we can do something very similar. So I'm just going to highlight this. Why not just recycle it? Go in here, and we're going to say, all right, we want to get the date. So let's just adjust this and move it up 1 square. That's our reference or starting point. I press Enter, and it pulls the correct date. So now I'll just drag these down, and we get, if I just make this a little bit wider, we get the group and the date. So for the code, there's only one little difference. the code is to the right of the name. So that's the code for Derek. This is the code for Simon. So we need a vertical, something to help us vertically locate the name. Before I was just saying up. Okay, as long as I know the column for Derek, the answer is always here for the group, for the date there. So let's, once again, I think I'll just reuse this. And instead of the column number, let's see if we can use the row number to get the proper row. A quick Control-Shift-Enter. And that's telling us, okay, so here's my mistake. I hard-coded this range up here. So what I need to do is use the same range like this. Copy it and go like that. Paste it. Control-Shift-Enter. And now we're getting a 14. So we see Derek is on row 14. Let's see what we get if we drag it down to Simon. That's a 15, which is correct. And looks like that's going to work. So I think I can just quickly reuse this, paste it in here, and make this now the reference point A1, way at the top there. And I'm going to say, so we've already got our E13 minus 1. Now let's try this, F13 minus 1. Press Enter. And okay, so we're obviously one off here. So it is getting Derek again. Will it get Simon if I do this? Perfect. So I have to do one little adjustment here. Instead of a minus 1, for the columns part, which is here, let's just take away the minus 1. And I press Enter because, of course, we want to move one column to the right. And because we're already in column 1, which is column A, we don't really need to adjust that E13 value, which is our helper column number here. So now I'll just drag that down, and you see it gets the perfect answer. So one last thing. We want to make sure we test this very carefully because we can always make mistakes. So the code for Derek, well, let's just simply go over here and type test. There it is, test. So we know that's working. We'll just go over here, type test. Yes, that's for Simon. And now for the group for Derek, let's do the same thing. Test it. And we know it's working. Perfect. I will undo that. And then the date. Let's do this for Simon's date. And we will put in test one last time. And there it is. So we know it's working. We'll undo that. And the last thing, of course, is to avoid these kind of things. When you go to design a model, try to do it something like this, where you've got one column, and when you put it all together, it makes life much, much easier.